and we are live. So we want to welcome you to a special Google Hangout with Striving for Eternity, and we're basically going to be talking tonight about discussing racism and race relations in light of what's been happening in Ferguson. And a lot of people have lots of questions, and there's been lots going on, and so we have gathered a panel of folks together to discuss some of the things that we have that we've actually, most of the panel, I'll say up front, are people I don't know personally, or I've met maybe just once. So but you're going to see a wide range of spectrum in the folks that we have represented here. I'm going to have each person introduce themselves, and then I'm just going to be asking questions of folks. So we have basically, I guess I'll unmute mics for each of you. So Letitia, I'll let you go first since your mic is not muted.
Hi. Yes. Just want an introduction to who I am and what do I do? All right. I'm Letitia Wong. I am the host of True Life Fridays Radio, which is an online radio program. We deal with pro-life issues. And, you know, race relations as they are right now is arguably a pro-life issue. And what I do is, what I have done is I actually live here in St. Louis, just about 15 minutes away from Ferguson, Missouri. So I have been at the site of the riots and the protests, and I've seen where the events took place. It's not far from my own home, and I have friends that live in the area. So I have been helping with some of the cleanup efforts through a church that's in Ferguson, and getting to know the people that are affected by the thefts and the looting, and just the business owners there. And I feel for them, and am willing to do whatever it takes to kind of bring some normality back to their lives.
All right. Mitch, would you introduce yourself?
Hey guys, Mitchell LeBron. I'm actually part of Striving for Eternity. I live here in New York. Nothing really special about me. I'm just a white Hispanic guy that lives in the hood, afraid for my life every day because I'm actually in one of the worst areas in Staten Island. I have seen both the colored end of racism as well as the white end of racism. So it's an interesting yet uncomfortable position because you never really feel safe.
All right, and Isaiah.
Hi everyone, my name is Isaiah Rivera. You may know me as One Truth, One Life on my YouTube channel. Again, I'm from Brooklyn, New York, fully Puerto Rican. I grew up in the hood, and I know the stigma when it comes to the street people and the cops. They don't mix, and now that I'm a Christian, born again Christian, I look back at it now, and I think that, you know, maybe something I can say can help with this situation in Ferguson, and not only Ferguson, but all around the world, and definitely all around the country. There seems to be a disconnect.
All right, and we're sorry we had a little bit of sound that came through there, but and then Willie, you want to introduce yourself? Well, Willie, we can't hear you if you are. I don't know if your mic is off. All right, so Melissa, we'll have, if you could introduce yourself while Willie gets his sound going.
Sure. You can't see me, everyone. I'm sorry about that, having some camera issues. But I'm Melissa Palou, and I live right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, and am involved in a number of different ministry type areas, pro-life apologetics, and these sort of things. I also co-host True Life Fridays Radio with Letitia, who's on the panel as well. Shout out to Letitia. And we, for some time, we've broadened our scope on our show, not focusing just on the issue of abortion, euthanasia, these sort of things, but looking at human rights. And racism has been a huge part of what we have tried to address. And how division is an issue, a pro-life issue that has come up, and we see this now in the news. But humanity and protecting humanity and valuing one another, regardless of our skin color, is a huge area in pro-life ministry that has not been addressed. So that is something that we have had a heart and a burden for. In terms of recently we did a show addressing and answering the white privilege conference and some of the nuances that have risen in the church in regards to that. So that's kind of where we're coming from and why we're here today. And I am African American. I know no one can see me, and you have to take my word for it. But so I've grown up in the South as an African American woman. Am in a interracial marriage. So this is something that I've had to deal with on a personal level as well.
Yeah, we were joking before we got started that before Will joined us, that the only African American we couldn't get a camera on, right? People may make accusations there, but oh well, we'll get over it. So Will, is your microphone working now?
Seems like it went out.
This is the beautiful thing about technology. When it works great. And oh, I see why. Okay, all right. Now, how about that, Will?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that was I guess, pilot error on my fault. I didn't notice.
Okay.
There's some controls that I have that I noticed your volume for some reason was all the way down. So, Will, if you could introduce yourself.
All right, guys. I'm Willie Richardson. I work predominantly with young African-American men and young African-American boys in inner cities where I do programming, seminars, teaching about the effects of hip-hop culture and fatherlessness. I'm currently writing a book. It's called Game Over, about the demise of the fathers and how that demise affects the daughter as she goes into a relationship. So anything dealing with boys, men, child support, fathers, relationships, and the breakdown of the African-American community, I pretty much got my hands in it.
Okay. And I didn't introduce myself yet, but my name is Andrew Rappaport. I'm the president of Striving for Eternity, who's hosting the Hangout tonight. I guess I'm the token white guy. We have to always have someone to play that role. My first, people don't, think that, often don't expect someone like me to have suffered from racism, but I want to give a little bit of a testimony so people understand. Like Melissa, I'm interracially married, though not with someone who's African American, someone who's from Hong Kong. But my first experience really with racism was back in high school. So most of my friends were African American until the day that Debbie moved to town. Debbie was a young, very pretty young lady who I started to date. And all of the guys who I thought were my good friends suddenly started picking fights with me and telling me to stay to my own color. And it really surprised me. It was my first experience with it, with having people that I thought were friends just turn that quickly. And I think that it's an issue that a lot of people, it's a deep-rooted issue for a lot of people. And so I want to start with just giving an overview of what my understanding of the events of Ferguson. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to unmute everyone's mics just so that if I get something wrong, I want you all to be able to chime in. But I want to give an overview of my understanding of the events as I've been trying to read them, and then we'll try to each have some questions that we're going to go through. Now, granted, I'll admit that I was away. I've been traveling and speaking, and I've been spending some time trying to get my youngest one off to college. I'm just having the effects of that too. The emotion of realizing that my youngest one is, and I don't quite know how that happened because I'm only 25. But thanks for
error.
Oh, the error already started. So it seems that about 2 weeks ago now, there was a shooting between a police officer. I don't remember his name now, but a white police officer who was, it seems, either was responding to a 911 call or was in the area. From what I had gathered was, it seemed like he was not feeling well, and he was in the area at with an ambulance when the 911 call came in. The 911 call was for a burglary or strong arm robbery, which happened at a convenience store. That, at least from a video that I saw, my understanding is that it is Michael Brown and a friend of his who may have been involved in that. Also approached them. Now, what we're not sure, I've heard differing accounts of whether Michael Brown was running away or had his hands up in the air saying "don't shoot," or whether he was charging the police officer. I have seen the autopsy report that they did on live TV, and that I think that from that you could probably eliminate that he was running away because all the shots were in front of him. But since that shooting, there's been a lot of unrest down there, and I know Letitia, who will be able to speak to firsthand evidence of what it's like going on down there. There's been a lot of unrest, and so what we're trying to do with this show is really kind of provide some, hopefully some solutions, some answers to looking at what could be done, what is the real root of the issues, what could be done about it, and that's what we're going to hope to try to cover tonight with our panel of guests. And so what I'm going to do is just ask you guys some questions up front. We've been I know some of you guys have seen the questions. We won't get through all of them, but I wanted this to be just open discussion and let each of you have opportunities to speak. So the first question I have for you guys is really to define racism. What is racism?
Well, I have a dictionary definition from dictionary.com, and I found it interesting. I'm going to read it. It says, racism, a belief or doctrine that inherent differences among the various human races determine cultural or individual achievement, usually involving the idea that one's own race is superior and has the right to rule others. I find it very interesting that they use that. They use the terms like human races and that one's own race. So I would say that it's fundamentally flawed, for it assumes that there are multiple human races. If you look up the word race on the same website, it's a group of persons related by common descent or heredity. Now, we all know that the Bible makes it very clear that every human being in history has a common ancestor, Adam and Eve, and then Noah. So that would kind of refute the idea of multiple races, therefore refute the idea stemming from racism, any idea from stemming from racism.
Hmm.
I'm done.
Anyone else want to add to that?
Well, sure. I think racism is a lot of things. Just to define it is, not a simple one-term thing, because things that are not considered racist by some people are things that are considered racist by some people are not considered racist by others. Is it a behavior or is it an attitude? for me, broadly speaking, I define racism as a negative attitude towards ethnic groups of a different color than oneself because of ethnicity. That's just kind of a working definition as opposed to the dictionary definition. Of course, people can have innocent or positive attitudes as well based on race, and technically I think that could be a form of racism as well, but we do not consider it racist because we select only negative attitudes to be racist.
Yeah, I often say, and I think Isaiah was kind of hitting on some of this, that as a Christian, I don't believe in racism, and that may confuse some people. But let me explain what I mean by that. What I mean by that is the fact that as a Christian, I can look at what Scripture says, and Scripture says that there is one race, a human race. The human race is separate from animals. The only race that's spoken of in the Bible is the unsaved versus the saved race. Meaning those who are regenerate in Christ are saved, and those who are not regenerate in Christ are not saved. And that's really the only racism that, in a technical sense, biblically. Scientifically, the greatest difference between any two people genetically is like 0.00, I think it's 125. So essentially, there's no difference. And I think that's something that we often, I guess, we talk about racism, and I want to kind of separate between, as a Christian, I believe that we're all human beings. We're all made in the image of God. When we talk of racism, we're talking more specifically to the issue, as Isaiah had said with the definition of one group of people assuming that they are better than another group of people for whatever reason. And so I think that might be the best working definition we could work with tonight. If anyone has something else to add, I don't know.
Well, I actually want to say something real quick on that. Where I agree with you guys that we are only one race, and there is no true racism. There is racism in the political sense, solely for political gain. You know, if you notice, not getting too deep into it, but most of the time when you see riots like this, it's usually not started off by a person or persons, but normally by a power player in the media, such as, you know, Sharpton or George W. Bush.
Or even CNN as a whole, or MSNBC. You know, I definitely would agree with you, Mitch, that there's definitely agendas on both sides. Not only I wouldn't only go to the left, but also to the right. There's definitely agendas, and I think racism is rooted in those agendas at certain points.
I was going to add too. I think when we hear the word racism, and what we have been brainwashed to think is that one can only be guilty of racism if they are a part of the majority ethnic group in that particular location. So, for instance, in America, where our culture is predominantly Caucasian, and then you have minorities, blacks, Hispanics, Asians, these sort of things. The thought is that one can only be racist if they are a part of the majority group. That one who is a minority is a priority, unable to be a racist. And I know that we will get into that, but I think that if with this topic, it encompasses more than just a dominant group oppressing a minority group, but rather it goes both ways. So there can be hatred if you prejudge someone solely based on the color of their skin, regardless of if you're a minority or they're a majority or whatever the case may be. I think that is legitimate racism.
I'll just say racism. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Racism is plain and simple. It's hatred. It's a hatred in one's heart for another person. For example, let's say a white man hates a black man. Okay, he hates a black man, and he's married. All right, can he go home and legitimately love his wife? No, because he has hatred in his heart. Vice versa. How can I hate a white person because they're white? How can I express love to someone else? I can't do it. So racism is period point blank hatred. It's dumb. It's stupid. I think it's one of the dumbest things on the face of the earth. To hate someone because of the skin that they were born in. That's just dumb and stupid. So Satan tries to get us concerned with the skin of man and not the sin of man. So racism is the sin of man, not the skin of man. And we have to understand racism is hatred. If you have a bad heart, you're a hater, period. It doesn't matter what the color is. So that's the bottom line to me.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. I mean, it's rooted in hatred.
Right.
And you know, it is interesting because, you know, with like what Melissa had said, I know that when I've said, as I shared in the beginning, that you know, I had you know, case where what I would argue is racism, because people were attacking me because of the color of my skin. They argued that couldn't be racism because I was white. And so that'll be a question we're going to probably get to in a minute, but I want to ask you guys this. Would it be fair if it is true that Michael Brown did go into this convenience store, and I'm saying this because we don't, you know, this is one of the things that I always see interesting with things like this. When we see events like this, there's a lot of rush to judgment. There's a lot of people who are playing the sofa quarterback or whatever it's called. I don't do football very well.
Monday morning quarterback.
Thank you. Yeah, they don't have quarterbacks in tennis. That's my sport. Mixed martial arts, you know.
All right.
So the reality is that when we see these people rushing to judgment and they don't have the facts, and that's one thing that does get to me when I see the media kind of almost jumping in and trying to assume guilt on any party, because when you have that, you have a case where the people are coming to a conclusion not based on what they actually know, but what others are saying could have happened, which is to generate a response. But with that said, if Michael Brown did go in, he and his friend, and stole some things from a store, you know, the store owner or manager tried to stop him, he pushed the guy aside, then he goes back out and has this altercation with the police officers. Is it fair, as I heard this week, is it fair to say that he was just being a dumb teenager, or is it fair to say he was actually being a criminal if he in fact did that? Is that a fair question to be asking?
It's a very fair question. As a black man, I'll say this. If you steal, you are a criminal. If you steal, you will lie. If you lie, you will kill. If you kill, you will steal. If you steal, it goes on and on. And so this was not a dumb kid who just happened to go in the store. And no, he went in with the intention to take things. And he's going to college tomorrow. Well, why are you robbing the store? Why, you should be packing your bags. And so that's criminal activity. There's no bones about it. And I'm going to say this real quick. White America, stop biting your tongues, because I know y'all are made to feel guilty about things. It is what it is, folks.
I mean, I'll say this. When it comes to him being, you know, a stupid teenager or a criminal, Well, I could say personally, I was once a stupid teenager. You know, I did a lot of stupid things when I was younger, and I got into a lot of trouble, and even with the police. Again, just saying that doesn't give any right. Doesn't give a. I don't think I deserve to get shot by a policeman for the things that I did, and I don't think petty theft would assert that. Again, I don't know all the facts, which is why I hold judgment. I don't know if there was an altercation, if it was self-defense. But just saying that he's a dumb teenager or a criminal, therefore he got what he deserved, that's just, again, that's just a rush to judgment, as Andrew said.
Yeah, well, okay, let me just clarify just one thing with the question, because I guess what's also in the question is so many of the reports, at least claims right now, we'll see what comes out in the court case, but the claim is that he actually had rushed the police officer, that he actually punched the police officer, and the police officer actually had to go to the hospital with damage to his eye. And then the police officer said, freeze. You know, he took out his weapon, he said, freeze, and supposedly Michael Brown rushed the police officer charging at him. I did hear one person that claimed to be an eyewitness that said that's what they had witnessed. And so if that's true, then there may have been reason that, you know, you could see if someone's running fast. If you look at the autopsy, where the bullets were, it could explain the bullet position. If he can't see, it could explain why he took several shots. The final shot that actually, from what I understand, killed him was straight on top of the head. So it could have been he had to have had his head down for that type of position. So I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, I mean, again, if that's the case, if he did rush him, if he did attack the police officer, then obviously the police officer has a right to defend himself. He doesn't know if, you know, if he's, you know, armed or anything like that, then, you know, that's justified. But again, at this point, we just don't know all the facts. At least I don't. So just on the fact that to call him I mean, I see a lot of comments on YouTube and Facebook. You know, they're saying, oh, that he was this, he was that. Look at all these pictures. Look at all that picture, and that's fine. I understand that, but that doesn't mean just looking at those pictures, not, you know, which really have nothing to do with the altercation. We cannot prejudge this young man and say, oh, he just got what he deserved. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I want to clarify what I was saying. This is not about, you know, he got what he deserved. This is about cause and effect. Okay. This has nothing to do with, you know, oh yeah, he should have got killed. No. And one of the things we have to be careful about is taking this and internalizing this as looking at it as ourselves. I am not Mike Brown. I am not Trayvon Martin. I am who I am. And so what we do a lot of times in the black community is this thing called groupthink, whereas if it happened to you, it happened to me. No, that's not the case. You made a decision to do something. That doesn't mean I'm with you. You know, when I tell people all the time, I'm with you when you're right, and when you're wrong, I'm not. And so it's not a thing about my past. You know, I was a dumb kid in high school. I made a lot of decisions. It could have been me. Well, it could have been you. I mean, so we have to understand that our decisions in life have consequences. Some get pats on the hand. Some get bullets. I could have killed myself as a kid, as a teenager. But I think the biggest difference in a lot of teenagers and a lot of men, especially, is their fathers. And that's the issue we have to really dig down in. And a lot of these young boys are fathers, and they're running amok in the streets with no care for authority. And a lot of them do lose their lives to gun and to violence. So we have to be very careful not to internalize this and make this an emotional conversation.
Okay, so I mean, that brings up a good point, Willie. What really, whether it be in Ferguson or in elsewhere, I mean, what can we look at as the root cause of these things? I mean, is it that the police are always wrong? Is it that I mean, there are bad police officers. We all know that. There's also good police officers. And one thing I think a lot of people don't understand is, I mean, at the end of the day, the police officer wants to get home to see his family.
Yes, he does.
That's right.
And people don't think about that. I mean, most of us don't have a job where we're putting our life on the line every time we leave the house.
Right.
And most of us don't have a job where there's a segment of the culture that hates us.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to bring that part up of it later, but what's the root cause of what happened at Ferguson? Is it bad police officers? Is it racism? What's the cause that's underlying all this?
Politically funded media. I can just leave it at that. It just seems like the media threw out the story so quick, threw out their side of the story so fast, and then everybody on the street reacted to that. It's the same thing we've seen with Trayvon. Not all the facts are out. No, everybody's going off of emotion. You know, it's again the complete logical fallacy of appealing to everybody's emotions for our reaction.
Yeah.
You know, they threw Sharpton out of Ferguson. They didn't want him marching there. And what is he doing this weekend? He's marching in New York. Why? New York has nothing to do with Ferguson.
Yeah, and you know what? I think Willie touched on it too. I think that a lot of people, when they see like a Mike Brown or a Trayvon Martin or somebody from that looks like them,
Right.
by appearance, they think to themselves, or they relate to that person. They say, "Oh, that could have been me." But he's right. It wasn't you. You weren't in that store. You weren't doing what he was doing. So again, I think it has a lot to do. This country as a whole, we're really not that smart. And as a group, we tend to just jump on something without thinking through. Like you said, we appeal to emotion more than appealing to the truth or to facts. And I think that the media feeds on that. They see that, and they see dollar signs, they see ratings, they see newspaper sales. And they're like, oh, these people are going to jump on this. Let's put this out and let's say this. And we have to be smarter than that. As individuals.
Mm-hmm. Certainly the profit aspect of this is certainly in play, but what is happening in Ferguson is not as simple as perhaps the media has portrayed it. There is more than one situation in Ferguson going on. We have the initial situation of the shooting death of Michael Brown by a police officer, and then I would say separate from that are the protesters, many of whom are professional political agitators who have come to Ferguson from places like New York, Texas, California, to exploit the situation and create one of their own. So I think when we're talking about what is the root cause of the situation in Ferguson, we have more than one situation. We have what's happening with the police investigation, with the shooting, and then we have the other side, which is the politicization of that situation. We have people with another agenda on their minds, and I think that everybody else has kind of hinted at that and said that it's driving a media narrative. They're trying to make this and create a racial situation. Does it have a racial situation? A racial element to it? Probably so. Is it the kind that is being portrayed in the media? Probably not. I mean, is this a racist white cop or black culture thing? I think the news media has worked very hard to frame it as the stereotype. The officer, Darren Wilson, is a racist white cop in a department full of racist white cops in an apartheid state in a city known as Ferguson. At least that's what Tremaine Lee of MSNBC said today. They say this because it plays well with the narrative they are trying to run here.
And I want to add to that. Great points, guys. You go back, you want to know the root causes of something. You look at the father of lies. Whenever people are emotional and you attach a lie to that emotion, you have a whole lot of mess about to happen. And so what happens is, it's a lie. The cop isn't about, or is not about a racist cop. It's not about Mike Brown hanging from a tree. Okay, this is not the 1950s or 1960s. And so what has happened is unforgiveness within the black community has caused the black community to say, you know what, I want some get back. And when somebody who doesn't look like me anywhere in the world, I want some get back from white folk. White folk, y'all hung us, y'all killed us, y'all put us in slavery, and used to be in slavery. And so it's revenge. It's simply revenge. And until Black America realizes that, it's never going to change. We're going to continue this. We're going to continue to get pimped by CNN and all the other lamestream media outlets who play our emotions.
Yeah, I think you just brought up a really, really good point, because I've had this discussion with friends of mine who are African American, and when you look at it, it's really my people, Jewish people, who've in the last 100 years have actually suffered under slavery. We don't know anybody alive right now in America, other than maybe the human trafficking and the sex slave, which is a whole nother issue. But we don't have folks that have been slaves here in America. You know, we did have it in Germany with the Jewish people. But I think that I really saw a lot of what, Willie, you're saying I started seeing it in the O.J. Simpson trial, where people were like, well, hey, it didn't matter if he did it. And one juror had said that. It doesn't matter if he did it. The cops have been doing this to us all along, and it's time that one of our own get off.
Wow.
And I do think that there's all of us kind of have to deal with the fact that we have to be people of justice. We have to have a justice system that's fair. And if we start making justice based on what is good for me or my people, we create a tribalism within America, and we're no longer a melting pot. We're a divided pot.
That's right.
I'll also welcome Leah. Leah just joined us. She joined a little bit late. So Leah, if you could introduce yourself real quick.
Hi, my name is Leah Johnson, and I live here in Sioux City, Iowa. And as Andrew said, I'm just now joining this discussion, so hopefully it'll be edifying. I look forward to hearing what everybody will say about it.
So Leah, I'll ask you, we were answering the question of kind of what might be the root causes of both racism and what's happening in Ferguson. Do you have anything that you'd want to add to that?
Well, I think it doesn't help when we have, because it seems like the media, they like to basically cause like emotion-based broadcasting, and I think they know exactly what they're doing with this case. So I think the media causes a lot of the strife that goes on between people groups.
Yep.
You know, and I want to just add real quick to that. You know, I think we're starting to see now, as the longer this goes on, we're starting to see the logical conclusion of all that, and to see what truly they really wanted. You know, we're now seeing a militarized police force that's now accepted. But we're also seeing on the other side, I was just reading the news the other day, that, you know, the gangs are now joining together in Ferguson. You know, the Crips, the Bloods, the Kings, they're all joining forces. You know, we haven't seen stuff like this since 1970s New York. That's scary. Yeah, that's really scary.
Yeah, it's like what Andrew said. It's a tribalism at best. You know, it's not. People don't think as individuals anymore. They think within the group. You know, it's everything that happens to them happens not to them but to the group. You know. And that's the problem. We've lost our identity.
And speaking of tribalism, guys, Africans in nature are very tribal, and so African Americans subconsciously live the same way. Very tribal people. Okay, and so what happens is when you're tribal thinking, you go along with the tribe. Whatever the tribe says, you do it, and that's the mentality of black. I couldn't tell you how many times I've been in the room with black people, and they say some of the most insane things, and they say it. Why? Because I'm black. As though my brain thinks like you because my skin is brown. That makes no sense to me.
Right.
I can think for my individual self. And the liberal Democratic Party is such a slave mentality that it keeps African Americans thinking it's us against the whole world, against the Republicans, Tea Party, the media, the white folk, the white cops, and that's a plain lie. And so, groupthink kills Black America. If we will ever stop and think for ourselves, my goodness gracious, the progress that would happen. But that slave mentality, we love old slave. I'm a runaway slave, by the way, guys. I'm a literal runaway slave, and I'm trying to free as many people as I can, and they don't want to be free.
Oh, that's why you're in the car.
Yeah, I was going to add to that.
I'm driving right now. And stop driving. Woo! I'm running.
Before Melissa speaks, I have to correct one thing though. The phrase tribalism I got earlier this week from speaking with Melissa, so it is hers. It's not original.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm going to trademark it. Yeah.
I need to be clear. I need to make sure that I'm not.
And I'm here, Leah. You just can't see me, so good to see you. But I was just going to add to what Willie said. This groupthink mentality. Since this shooting, because I have not made a determination one way or the other, because I'm waiting for the information to come in. I have been told that I am a race traitor and that I hate my people because I just want to make an informed decision. And that to me is so bizarre. I don't think that way. I try to think of as objectively as possible, and I don't understand how my skin color has any type of it doesn't have anything to do with facts here. I mean, in terms of how I interpret the facts. Facts are facts. They're not black facts. They're not white facts.
Right.
And so that's something that I'm dealing with, and it is very it's sad. It's very sad.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things Willie was saying, and Willie, you were kind of giving the groupthink or tribalism to just African Americans, but I mean, I know in my wife's case, when she came here to the country, she stayed within the Asian community, and she really one of the big reasons she didn't want to marry me was because I was white, because I was American, and she wanted to stay within her community.
Right.
Now that she's married to me, I'm sure she probably has tons of reasons that she should have rethought that decision. But I think that there is this notion where when people look for things that they have in common with someone, and they want to build, kind of like to build a consensus. And it's as if, well, hey, if we're all the same either color or from the same area, we should all agree just because we have that in common.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, you go ahead.
It's very natural to want to have affinity groups based on color of skin, background, ethnicity. We can build affinity groups on any infinite number of things, depending on how we choose to live. But what we're being taught, I think it has a lot to do with public education. Growing up, we're instilled with this idea from years ago that people are grouped into tribes. There's black people, there's Hispanic people, there are Asian people, and everybody kind of thinks along the racial lines. I think it's kind of demeaning to think that people can't think for themselves. They only think along racial lines. But you know, there's a very natural element to that. What I think has gone really wrong with that is when it's being used more as a tool of division and to bring the mind down to live at that level, rather than saying, hey, we are also individuals with thinking minds and can make our own decisions about what we see and what we feel. And I think, yeah, go ahead. That was all I wanted to say.
No, I was going to say I'll even take it a little further. I would even consider it a form of idolatry.
Yes.
You know, they look at, you know, if you look at the group as sovereign above yourself, the group can do no wrong.
Wow.
That's then what? Then that's my Lord. That's whom I serve. Well, again, then that's idolatry. We serve one master.
That's right.
He's given us our law. He's given us his law. And if we don't submit to that, if we submit to any other sovereignty or so-called sovereignty, then it's idolatry.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you one thing, man. That's a huge point. And I think in the black community, I think we worship ourselves. I really do. I really do. In the black community, we worship, you know, black love, black man. What is black love, folks? That doesn't make sense. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. He didn't love a color. He loved the world. And so, black man, man, that don't even make sense. But what it is, let me tell you what it is. It's a result of the drought in healthy marriages in the black community. So when there's a drought in something, you have to go to the, you know, the easy thing to pick out. Black, oh, look at them. Black marriage, black love. Oh, we got hope. See, we get hope in color and not in the real thing. That's our problem. We're trying to get hope through a color. And this is America. Black people make up 12% of the population, okay? But we love to segregate ourselves away from the mainstream America. You can't make it in this nation just doing your own thing. And so we have to learn how to be cross-cultural, learn how to get to know other cultures, get to know other people. You never know how the opportunity may come. I tell people all the time, you know, say the black unemployment rate. It's not necessarily there's no jobs. You got to know people. Every job I've got, I've known somebody. So you got to, it's more than a color, you know, it's about relationship. And that's what the black community fails to realize. You have to be able to build relationships with people that don't look like you.
Okay, so let me ask you this. I remember, because the issue that you're bringing up, a lot of people would say, well, the reason that black people can't find the jobs is they don't know the people, they're not being given the break. And I heard today some people that were trying to make the argument that this is really, it's about class warfare. It's you know, it's that the blacks are not being allowed to have their opportunity, and like they're somehow being held down. And like in the Trayvon Martin thing, it was, hey, it was an issue of should someone in a hoodie, should you be scared, or are you profiling? And what I asked back then, I remember being in New York City and some folks that had approached me and asked me what my thought was on it. And the issue that I brought up there was, I said that, you know, I asked this question this way: if you get into an elevator and you see two guys that are dressed in biker gear, are you, as this was a black man and woman, a black couple, are you scared? And both of them were like, well, yeah. I said, why? They're like, well, it's the way he's dressed. And so the reality is, I'm going to pose this as a question, but I think that we are training up people who are training themselves or taught that they're victims, rather than seeing it as this is something I have to overcome. I look in being a speaker. I've traveled to different countries. I've been to the UK. I've been to Canada a number of times, where I get opportunities to see differences there. We don't see the racism that we see in America, and I think they've dealt with it better. But they don't. I think a lot of people don't see themselves as victims. They're not claiming that they need some victim status to get ahead. I know that if you look at the Chinese in America who were, enslaved in the West years ago, after the blacks were freed, but then we look at the Jewish people in Holocaust. They used education as the way to get out and get above this. And so, do you think that there is a victim status that's being sought by some people, not all, and it's not just blacks, but I think there's a lot of different groups that this is happening. But do you see that there's a victim status that's trying to be earned?
Victimology runs rampant in this country. That's what it's all about. You know what? It seems like we celebrate victims, and it's not. It's not only the black community. It's across the board, and not only people groups, but situations. We praise the victims. And it's just a horrible mentality, and the repercussions are just so bad. I mean, it can go so deep, and it affects so many. And like we need to stop that. That's something that's political entities take full advantage of that. And again, it makes people lose their critical thinking, and again puts them back on their emotions. When people stop thinking critically and logically, and you get them to think emotionally, you can get them to do anything.
Yes.
Anything. And that's the problem. That's what this victimology that I heard from a really good documentary, and it's just so rampant. That's what I got to say.
This is nothing new. This is not anything. Booker T. Washington himself in 1911, over 100 years ago, wrote. He called it those days the problem profiteers. He wrote in his book, there is another class of colored people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, and the hardships of the Negro before the public. Having learned that
they have the biggest voice.
Right. Having learned that they are able to make a living, Sharpton, out of their troubles, they have grown into the settled habit of advertising their wrongs, partly because they want sympathy and partly because it pays. Some of these people do not want the Negro to lose his grievances because they do not want to lose their jobs. And this can apply to any race of people. But ironically, not to white people, though.
It applies to everybody, but I want to say this, real quick. One thing about the black community is this: whatever the black person, black man, woman does, is going to be done to the max. You better believe. If I push you out, it's going to be done to the max. If I go to school, it's going to be done to the max. If I play sports, everything that we do is at the max. And so if I fail, it's going to be at the max. If I have an entitlement mentality, it's going to be at the max. And so the black folk don't know how to go halfway. We going hard, man. You're either going hard or going home. So you dealing with black folk, we going in. If it's going to be good, so good, it don't make no sense. If it's bad, you better watch out. And so that's the issue. And you mentioned about Jews using education. Well, guess what? There's another E word that the black man has used. It is called entitlement. Okay? So Jews use education. We have used entitlement. Will you tell me the results?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
was going to say with the victim mentality, the whole goal, if you look at it, to be a victim is to feel powerless. To feel like you're not in control, you're powerless. And when you're powerless, you give up your when you're powerless, you give up your fight, and you therefore need someone to fight for you and someone to depend upon. And this is how the our government this is how they operate. Because the more dependency that is upon them, the more that they're needed, the more power that they have when individuals feel like they are powerless. And that is what the victim mentality does.
Yes.
Wow.
yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
I think that it was interesting. You're saying entitlement. We're talking about how we try to force fairness in a way.
Yep.
I remember I'm an engineer by trade, and so I remember sitting in a room of about 40 individuals where we had to learn about what a minority is. And so anyone that was Hispanic, that was their own ethnicity, they're totally that whole group minority. And it just kind of went through every different category. And I'm glad that I work with people that have a sense of humor, but out of a room of like 40 some people, basically I turned to the person that was teaching, I said, wouldn't it have been easier just to say, anyone who's a non-white guy? And I turned to the only other white guy in the room and I said, Bill, do you feel like I'm a minority here? And everyone burst out laughing. Or sorry, I said, do you feel like a majority here? But what I'm hearing a lot is about this idea of people that are using racism to kind of get ahead.
Yes.
I want to ask this question. I don't want to get too political. I'm not asking how people voted or things like that. But and I'm going to say this, that I believe that our president is just as much white as he is black. That might shock some people, but he's got a white mother and a black father. I don't know how that makes him black or white. It makes him a human being. But we see him as a black person. My question is this. Do we see the fact that Barack Obama has the federal government has come in, he came back for vacation just to address the issue in Ferguson, and then went back on vacation during the issue of ISA. This is an important issue to him, but do you feel that his involvement is helping or hurting the black cause?
I don't think it's doing anything at all. I think for the most part, this country, well, the media will spin it one way, but the reality is, I think most people just see him as pretty much of a joke. For what he really is standing for. Great, you put the nail on the head. He came back for Ferguson, left when ISIS was threatening America. It's kind of obvious that nobody really cares what he says for the most part, but the media will spin it as if they do.
Really,
You
you
know, I
had dropped
look at
off
it.
there for a second. The question that I had asked was is Barack Obama's involvement helping or hurting the black cause?
Again, with Willie laughing in the background. Again, he's definitely not helping. Again, that's a great example. How he reacts with something like ISIS, and how he reacts to this. Well, what does he see? Again, politically, you got to, he's thinking as a politician. If I speak on this, okay, if I speak on this, it's going to affect how they vote. It's going to affect this. It's going to affect that. ISIS, I don't know, for some reason I don't think he sees it the same way. And again, and it goes back to this victimology, sense of entitlement. So he's definitely. It doesn't seem like he's helping the situation at all. I mean, you look at the situation with Trayvon Martin. I mean, that spun out of control when Eric Holder, his one of his cronies, got involved when there really was no reason to. So I mean, he definitely does not help the situation at all.
No.
Y'all go ahead, man. I can't. Y'all go ahead. I'll go last.
I was gonna say, look, this president campaigned on being the post-racial president, yet from early on he primed people. It was a very clever move on his part. He primed people by saying that Republicans, and I'm not trying to be political, I'm just saying that's what he said, Republicans were going to make fun of his name, they're going to poke fun at his color. You know, he already set the tone that opposition was going to be racial and denigrating, so that anyone who ended up saying anything negative about him was cast as racial and denigrating. And so now we had Eric Holder, his AG, come to Ferguson. He has made remarks about it, Ferguson here, and everything was laced with this "it's all about race" tone. Well, if that's what you run with, you can't ever break free from that. And just look at this. This was a young man who was shot. We have an officer. They happen to be black and white. The reason why we make it a racial situation is we bring all our baggage into it.
Yes.
Oh my goodness! Is our president helping? Absolutely, emphatically, no. Okay. As a matter of fact, he actually incites racism. He incites the situation with Trayvon. If I had a son, he would look like Trayvon? Wow. Really? So, Mr. President, would he act like Trayvon? That's more important than he looked like Trayvon.
Right.
You know, will he have a father at home? That's more important. Whether he looks like. See. What people don't know is this: Tracy Martin. Guess what? I had to go back, but Tracy Martin. Guess where he was that night? He was out with his side piece. All right. He was living with his side piece, and his son came to stay with him. But guess what? Trayvon was dead that night, and Tracy Martin was out all night. He said he thought his son, who was on 10-day suspension, was at the movies. He thought his son was at the movies, folks. And he didn't find out his son was dead until the next morning. Good fathering. So if our president had a son who looked like Trayvon, I guarantee you this, he wouldn't be on 10-day home suspension, sit 4 hours away from his home. So we are insane, people. We are insane. And Satan is using the skin of man and hiding the sin of man. He got us messed up. Yeah. And we constantly jumping these political hoops, these emotional hoops. Racism is nothing but an emotional lie.
It is.
That's all it is. It's an emotional lie. It's an emotion. It's a lie with emotion attached to it. If you attach any lie with emotion, you have got
people
yourself.
Yep, all over.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Leah and then Melissa if you guys have anything you want to add to that.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, Melissa, what's up?
Yeah, I was going to say I definitely think that there has been agitation from this administration in terms of race relations in this incident and other incidences, because that is, you can even hear it in Eric Holder's tone. He is pursuing a prosecution of this officer, and while the facts are still coming in, while a grand jury is still reviewing the evidence. And for the top attorney in the Department of Justice to have that type of attitude, and to today, what did he say? Yes, I'm an attorney general, but I'm also a black man. So he, again, like we're saying, this lie and the emotions, he is playing right into that. And what we need is objective, clear, logical leadership right now. Something that's a leadership that's going to unite us. But we see each time when this administration interjects themselves into these situations that they cause more division than anything. And that's not the role that they should be playing. And it's for their own political advantage.
Leah, you got anything you want to add?
And really that's all that you're seeing. It's just all of this is just purely emotion based. It's not based on really not objective actual facts.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, people are just enraged and angry and upset, and there's no facts to the whole story at all. It's just nothing but emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what people play to.
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna end up transitioning after this question to us, looking for solutions. But I want to bring up one thing, because we've heard from a couple of you guys. You've mentioned the media, mentioned politics, mentioned individuals, either by name or just in general, who profit off of racism. I mean, they may be black, but they do profit from it up the chain. But here's a question, and I think, Willie, maybe you're going to be the best one to answer this, but
Let's go.
How much has the hip-hop culture affected this? Now, I know you brought up one of the things, like I mentioned, you brought up the fact that it's fatherlessness.
Yes, sir.
So with all those, and one more I wanted to bring up is hip-hop culture. So how much does that play into this?
Oh my goodness gracious. God, hip-hop culture is the disguise of the demise of the black community. What am I talking about? What am I talking about? This is what I'm talking about. Hip-hop culture would have never, ever existed if there were strong fathers in the home. Okay? It would have never, ever existed. Okay? Never. Hip-hop culture was birthed out of neglect, fatherless homes, and rebellion. Okay? The culture started in the Bronx. Yeah, they were going to use this culture to stop the violence. So you had pimps, hoes, drug dealers, bangers, and gang bangers. They came all out together. We're going to dance. We're going to rap. We're going to sing. We're going to spit on our heads. And we're going to come together. Well, folks, how many of y'all know that apart from Christ, there is no love, there is no unity, and it sure ain't no fun? Well, you may be having fun, but you really don't know. It's just foolishness. And so they try to create a culture to help them feel better about themselves, and they put the music on and got to going with the James Brown. And so,
please leave a message after the beep, and we will return your call. Thank you.
Hip-hop culture has destroyed the black community. You saw Nelly. Nelly was like on Twitter. He was like, hey guys, let's wait till all the facts come out. He's from St. Louis native. Let's wait till all the facts come out. Man, they smacked him all side his head on Twitter. You don't care. You a sellout. Yeah, that's your city. Nelly, within the next 72 hours, he got a Mike Brown t-shirt on talking about, I am Mike Brown. Man, if you don't get sick, see, hip-hop, the music, the culture of rebellion is killing our young people. Mike Brown, he even had a song about his hatred for authority and cops. Mike Brown, rapping. You can go look it up on the internet. And so the culture of hip-hop is to hell with song, to hell with love, to hell with life. To hell with all this stuff. I want to do what I want to do, and I got a culture and a music to back me up. Man, I'm sick of this mess.
Well, yeah, the reason I actually brought it up is I remember after 9/11, there was a case where, some of the folks, there were people that knew something was going on with some of the people that were involved, and someone asked him, why didn't you go to the police? And he said, hey, I can't go to the police. I'm in the hip-hop community. We don't talk to police. And it's created this division, I think, where, you know, we have a disrespect for the police officers, and it's actually, I think, going to have the effect where if there's a group of people who are always, you know, feeling the police officers always do wrong, then the result is that eventually just the police officers are going to start, you know, taking matters into their own hands over time, and that's how you get into, you know, a militarized state, you know, where there needs to be order, but you have a group of people, whoever they are, that just feel the police are always wrong. And if that's the case, it's just going to escalate and escalate and escalate. And so we see, I mean, I think I agree a lot with you, Willie, that fatherlessness is a big problem. A lack of education, I think, is a big problem. I think that I've said this within the Islam community when they say, hey, look, why is it that, you know, people think all Muslims are bad or terrorists? And it's like, well, until Muslims rise up and speak against radical Islam, that's going to continue. That's what happened in the Middle Ages with the Christians. They rose up and said the Catholic Church has got issues, and there was a reformation that occurred. But that came from within. I think in this case there needs to be more men that rise up. I mean, I remember when Bill Cosby tried to do that, and he tried to say, look, we need to be educated. We need to stop having kids without fathers. And he was silenced. You know, after he did that, I haven't really heard from him again.
Well, it goes back to the point where he just said, like, you know, you see Nelly, and, you know, he puts on Twitter, let's get all the facts, and he just gets completely slammed. And, you know, I think what's needed is someone who just doesn't care. You know, I mean, what I mean is who doesn't care if they get slammed, who doesn't care, you know, what people think, but again, is going to stand up for what's right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
it's going to stand up for what? It's going to stand up for what's right. It's going to stand up for due process. You know, it's going to stand up for objective facts. And it seems like, you know, it starts, and then once they get a little bit of, you know, backlash, they fall right back into that, you know, into the group thing.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, and again, and they see it, oh, it's going to affect my pocket, or it's going to affect this. Listen, again, like you said, it's going to, like what Andrew said, it's going to continue to escalate. And we can stop it now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so let's talk about that. What are we've identified some things that we see as issues here, right? We've talked about a fatherless generation. We've talked of education, a lack of education, and I'll add to that with, you know, I think one of the things I say to young people, not just black people, but young people who say, well, I can't find a job. One of the things I say is, do you know how to read, write, and speak?
There you go.
Nobody wants to hire some person who is speaking in text language. You know, BRB. No, say be right back. You know,
like you said, no matter how they look.
No matter how they look, it's not. There is a thing where people want to hire educated, smart people that are self-initiatives. They take things upon themselves. They're real go-getters. But the way we dress, I mean, why is it that when people go into an interview, they dress up? I mean, my son in high school went to go to, you know, one of the retail stores for a job at, you know, just, you know, to straighten up the clothes, okay, in a retail store. But he had a resume. He had it in a folder. He came in there dressed in a tie and a shirt. They hired him on the spot.
Yes.
And every single job he applied for, same with my daughter, they were hired on the spot. Why? Presentation. They speak, when they speak in the interview, they don't use slang. They use proper English.
They talk white.
Well,
okay.
That's part
they
of
would
the
actually
problem.
talk more Asian. My daughter did get one job because she was Asian. So, and it was because she could speak to the chefs. It was an Asian restaurant, but it's a thing where we have to think about that aspect. So I think Willie's hit on a big one of fatherlessness, a generation of people who don't have a family unit to grow up in, both mother and father. Some people are being raised by grandparents. I think education is lacking. You know, when we make excuses for people, it's not helping them. I think that the way we dress and talk and teach people, I think that's the whole hip-hop culture. I agree with Willie that it's a real problem. And it's easy to blame even the media and those that are making a profit of all this. But now what I want to ask is the question of what are the solutions? What are things that we could do? We all agree racism exists. And we all see that there's many different issues in it. There's many different players. We have, you know, like we mentioned, those that are politically, they keep their jobs that way. We have those who are, because of racism, they make their money that way. You know, kind of the old protection racket that we see. Hey, if you support our coalition, you know, we'll keep people, you know, from saying that you're racist. We have those people, but then we have some of the other issues like that Willie and Melissa have brought up, this tribalism, this lack of fathers and all this. What are some real solutions that we could start trying to employ to bring healing to this?
Let me go real quick. My phone battery is about to die. Let me just say this, Rick, before my phone goes out. Marriage is the key. Okay. Not only are there, but there are husbandless homes with children there. It's you just messed up. And so we don't have any husbands. We have too many people who are making babies. Okay, I'm gonna give y'all an example. I'm gonna give y'all a good example. Go to a wedding, and when the woman throws the rose,
I think you're.
They don't want marriage, and so if you don't want marriage, you don't want a sound foundation for a family, and so we don't have husbands, we don't have any wives, we have baby mamas, baby daddies, and yeah, you can go down the line. So once you get back to marriage, then you can deal with anything. Now you can teach little Junior how to dress and talk and walk. Now you can teach little Keisha or Andy or Sally how to be a lady and how to dress appropriately, how to speak and be mannerable. But without that, you can't do it. Okay. It's just hard to be there when you're not there. You can't be a part-time position. You want to work full-time. You can't get part-time hours.
I think Willie, we're kind of losing you there.
I'm sorry.
That's right. I think maybe one thing you could do to save your battery is tap on your phone and shut the camera off. That might save your battery some.
Bam. But yeah, guys, but marriage, family. There are no more families, and that's our problem. You want to know how? You know the fastest way out of poverty is to get married. When you got two people who will work 40 hours a week, guess what? You can pretty much get out the hood. In the projects making babies, ain't nobody trying to marry her. So all she feels her value is making babies. I used to be in banking. Told me one time that a woman came to the bank and she asked her, "So what are your assets?" I said, I got. What?
Yeah, I think for folks that may not have been able to hear Willie because the microphones kind of come in and out, he's making a very, very good point. That if you have people who are in a position where the only value they see in life, no one's going to marry them if they're just having children. The only value they see is to have more children, and that becomes only makes the situation worse. And he also made the point that marriage is where we solve problems. I mean, when we have a situation where we have issues, is when we have a mother and a father to work together. I don't know about any of you guys that are married. I'm married. My wife is basically polar opposite of me in a lot of ways. I just got to spend a weekend with someone who I know her sister well, and she was anxious to meet my bride. She knows me. We've done some ministry together, but she said she was really anxious to meet my bride because she had heard from her sister how my bride is so much opposite of me and how we balance one another. And I think what Willie's point was is a lot to that. That when you have a husband and a mother and a father, there's balance in that relationship. I think that becomes an important thing. So one thing we could be trying to encourage, and I know Willie's phone was dying, he had to drop, but I think he brings up a good thing. We need to stress strong family structure. And he pointed out a point. If you have two people working 40 hours a week, that's not the strong family structure he's talking about. Because you have two people going different directions, they're stressed out, and the kids suffer the brunt of it. And that's not just black families. I think that's overall. We need to strengthen the family. But are there other things you guys see for solutions? You know, maybe Letitia, you're down there right now in Ferguson. What could be done down there, do you think, to ease the tension?
Well, I mean, let me answer the question broadly first. You had asked, what are some solutions to, racism in general? I would add to what Willie had said and agree with that. And also, in our culture, we need to stop seeing people for what they are instead of who they are. I mean, we need to stop teaching in our schools that people belong in categories according to race or class. We need to stop teaching that America was built on slavery and white supremacy. We need to stop teaching that moral values are relative to one's culture or tribe. People need to believe. I mean, people who believe that don't have a reason to complain about racism, because racists can say they only believe what their culture or tribe believes. I mean, tribalism is regression. The move to tribalism is walking backwards in time. We're not going forwards. We're not getting better. We're going backwards in time. We're getting worse. Jesus was neither black, nor white, nor Asian, nor Hispanic. None of those things.
That's right.
And we are to believe in him as the God incarnate, not as a color of his skin. And how can we look at God that way, who created us, and only see the surface when he died for people of all races? No matter, I mean, this is not, I'm not going to say that skin color doesn't matter to your identity. I'm saying skin color does not matter to your value. Right. And if we are valued in the eyes of God enough to come and die on the cross for, then we need to see each other with that same kind of value. And so here in Ferguson, first of all, as a resident of St. Louis, seeing all of these people coming here from outside of St. Louis, professional agitators that I've seen, they just need to get out. Get the heck out of St. Louis. You are not here for the family of Michael Brown. You are not here to make things better. You're here to bring this controversy down to a level to meet your own personal agenda, political, whatever it is. You're here to punish people. You're here to cause people to have these vengeful attitudes toward a race of people. I mean, it's perpetuating the kind of racism that we want to see disappear. So, I mean, that was the one thing that I'd like to see in Ferguson, for everyone that's here that is trying to push an agenda, to get out. Push your agenda in your own cities. Don't come here and do it. And because they're victimizing the people that are living in those businesses, that are getting looted, that are getting bottles thrown in their parking lots, that are just having people loiter in front of their businesses day and day night. The business there since last week has not picked up. I visited some stores today, and the ones with boarded up windows. And I asked one lady who owns a restaurant if business had been better, and she says, it's better than it was better than last week, but last week they took a huge hit where nobody came in, up and down the street where they've been looting and protesting. I mean, they're causing the suffering of people that just want to live. They just want to live and go to work and go home and carry on with their lives. Is that too much to ask to leave them alone?
Melissa, do you or Leah have something that you guys want to add?
Yeah, I mean, we've dealt with a lot of the problems, and I agree. Family, taking God's word seriously, not feeding into division, being agents of unity are all solutions. I think that, like Letitia said, we need to stop looking at people from the perspective of what they look like, but trying to get to know people and taking God's command to love our neighbor seriously, and that means everyone, not just your neighbor who looks like you, but whoever we come in contact with. And I think it may start small. Things like this. We need to do more things like this. We need to have open dialogue. We need to have white Americans who are not afraid to talk about race because they fear that they are going to be already portrayed as racist. So there's a lot of different nuances that could help this problem. Ultimately, submitting to God's lordship. But again, even in our churches, I'm finding a lot of hidden and subtle hatred, and that saddens me as well. So it's complex, but I think things like this help. We start conversations, and I thank you for putting this together, Andrew. It's been, I think, very beneficial. I think that it'll help a lot of people.
Thank you. Leah, do you have you want to have anything you want to add?
No.
No.
I'd like to say
What you
something.
guys said.
Go ahead, Isaiah. I think I could say this. And I'd probably be right. Probably the vast majority of these inner city kids have some type of Christian background, and that's really sad. And I think the reason why they're not in the church is it possible that they heard the wrong message? Did they hear a man-centered message or a God-centered message? Are they submitting to the lordship of Christ, or are they just saying, "Oh, what can God do for me?" I think that it permeates the man-centered message that they say, "Oh, God will do this for you, do that for you." They never get to the point that you're a sinner, you're guilty before God. You will face His wrath one day unless you repent and put your trust in Him. That message, I tell you, you know what? Probably a vast majority, they never heard that message. And I can say that from experience. I mean, I grew up in the inner city. I grew up in the church, and I rarely heard that message. Rarely heard that message, and that's sad. And it seems like more and more quote-unquote churches, because it's profitable, because it's it's popular. And again, this is the results. People leaving the church in bunches, calling us a bunch of hypocrites. We need to, again, I think that what solves all these problems, and I think everyone would agree on this panel, is the gospel. The gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yes.
That is, again, all of these problems, and racism is just one problem. The gospel solves every problem.
Yes.
We start with the gospel, and the gospel branches to each and every life situation that we have. And we need people out there, more people, and I'm sure there's people out there, but we need more people out in Ferguson preaching the gospel. We need Christians to get up from their chairs and preach the gospel in their neighborhoods. the gospel will produce those fathers. The gospel will produce those churches. The gospel will produce those extracurricular activities. It'll again, the gospel is multifaceted, and that's where we need to start.
Well, I wanna thank each of you guys for coming on. And I know Willie had to drop off, but I think that each of you have given a lot of good insight into the situation that we all end up struggling with. The issue of racism really isn't isolated to any one group of people. And I really think, I've said this for a long time, but I think the way you end racism is by ending all racism. And people usually don't understand it, so let me explain. If I say that we should end white on black racism, but I make excuses and accept black on white racism, then I haven't ended racism. And the only way to end racism is really, I believe, the real solution is in Scripture, is in seeing that we're one race of people, a human race, a fallen race, that unfortunately back in the Garden of Eden has fallen, has violated God's law. And because of that, we're not in a right relationship with God. And that's the solution, as you heard Isaiah say, that the real solution to racism is found in Jesus Christ. Because Jesus Christ is where we have reconciliation between God and man. You had in the first century a reconciliation at that time between another two groups of people that hated each other, the Jew and the Gentile. A Jew and Gentile back then was like the Republicans and Democrats today getting together. It didn't happen. A Jewish person wouldn't enter even into a Gentile house. But through Jesus Christ, there was true reconciliation. I can get together with people that I know that back in their country, they would kill me because they grew up Muslim. But because we've both come to Christ, we have been true reconciliation. And in that, we can get together as one race of people. And I think that what Isaiah said is very true. We have a weak church that's not preaching the biblical gospel. It's not preaching the fact that all of us are guilty under God's standard. And all of us, we've lied, we've stolen, we've done things that would make us criminals in God's sight. And for the people that want to say that, well, Michael Brown was just some criminal and got what he deserved, well, I have news for you. If you're watching this, you and I are the same criminal. If you want to say he was a criminal, we too are criminals, but maybe not on earth, but definitely in God's sight. And that's why Jesus Christ, God Almighty, came to earth to die on that cross, and that's how we have reconciliation. If we want to see reconciliation between black and white or Asian and Mexican or whatever group you want, reconciliation is truly found in Jesus Christ, because that's where we separate ourselves and realize we're not above any other human being, but we're humbled to think that Almighty God would come to earth and die on a cross to be a payment of sin for us. That humbles us. That makes us lower, makes us at least recognize that we're lower. And that's the message that I think will bring true healing. That's the message that we should go as some are doing and going in with the churches into Ferguson right now, as we heard tonight. Those that are going into Ferguson and helping and doing the cleanup. But we also need to go in with the message of the gospel. Unfortunately, they've heard a different message for so long that many people believe that's the message of the gospel. And it's only through the gospel that we're going to see true reconciliation. And we've seen that throughout history. John Calvin in Geneva had a place that was just, it was in dire straits. And through the gospel, people started seeing their responsibility to work so that they could take care of the poor. And the poor that became believers started seeing their responsibility to work and to work hard to get jobs so that they could take on the responsibility. People started to learn to read so they could read God's Word. That's a message in our culture right now that's being silenced. In our culture right now, a girl just got suspended for saying "bless you" to a student that sneezed in school. We're living in a culture that wants to silence God, but without God, there's not going to be solutions to these problems.
Still off the gospel thing right now.
So this is what we need. We need the gospel of Jesus Christ. We need the good news. And so in closing here tonight, I want to thank all the panel. I thank each of you for coming on, for helping out. This has been, I think, really good discussion. And for those of you who are watching, my final plea to you is to turn from trusting yourself as a good person or trusting in your good works and trust what Jesus Christ did on that cross. Black, white, yellow, red, it doesn't matter what color. We all are one when we come to Christ. Male, female, free or slave, Greek or barbarian, that's the language used in Galatians that Paul used. All of us come to Christ the same way. We come through faith in Him. That's where we're going to find true healing. And I want to just say, if you don't know Jesus Christ, I would challenge you to turn from trusting yourself and trust what He did on that cross as a payment for sin, that you may become a child of God, have eternal life, and through the reading of God's Word, know how to live in a way pleasing to Him that will bring healing. To bring, as Christians, we have a ministry of reconciliation. I hope that today's broadcast helped to bring reconciliation. We thank you for watching. We're going to try to have more discussions like this to hopefully try to bring reconciliation to difficult issues. And we want to, as we depart and go offline, we want to remind you to strive to make today an eternal day for the glory of God.